welcome back to the show. Hazel here, helping you to go from where you're at to where you'd love to get to in the best, safest and fastest way possible to break you free from the grind. So, my question for you today is, who do you take advice from? It's a really good and interesting question to ask yourself, particularly at points in the market that we see at the moment, especially in terms of cryptocurrencies, property, the stock market. There's so many facets going on at the moment in these markets that all of a sudden everyone comes out of the woodwork, everyone has an opinion, everyone seems to know best. The interesting thing is that it's only ever from that person's perspective. So you've got to really ask yourself the question, who am I seeking advice from? And the topic today is going to go into, why would you seek advice from somebody who doesn't know? Let's say you're down the pub and you're having a nice summer's pint and you're chatting to your mate, and your mate's telling you all about cryptocurrencies, and they've heard that Bitcoin's on the rise and that, there's all sorts of movements going on and it's going to hit, 250k by the end of this year, and etc., etc., etc. And all of a sudden, if you've not been involved in cryptocurrency before, you're listening to your mate thinking, wow, they know what they're talking about. They're keeping ahead of the news. And what's all this Bitcoin malarkey and etc., etc., etc. Do I need to get involved? And then you get a bit of the old FOMO, which is, of course, fear of missing out. However, the biggest question is, does your mate really know about Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency market? Or have they just listened to headlines? They've been dabbling a bit. They might have got a bit lucky by putting a few $100s or pounds in a few months ago and seen a bit of a rise. And, maybe they're right to be sort of getting you introduced to the idea. However, the question is, what have they achieved from it? What do they actually know? How long have they been in it? And how much of a strategy are they following? So it's interesting, isn't it, that these types of things come up in conversation. I remember talking to a really good friend of mine way back when, gosh, it must be, 15 years ago or so. And I think it might have even been longer, actually, because I think it was as the credit crunch was kind of coming back in 2008. And I remember having a conversation with her, and she knew that we bought properties and that we were investing in property. And she said to me, oh, Hazel, it's, I've heard that the market's going to crash and it's going to be awful. And, if I were you, I would sell all your properties and, get out of the market while you can, because a big crash is coming and you just don't know what's going to happen, and etc., etc. Now, if I'd listened to her, if I'd heard her fear, listened to her, took it on board, and then took action on that, and had sold the properties that we owned at the time because of that fear, we would have completely stuffed ourselves. We would have done ourselves out of years worth of amazing cash flow and decades of decent capital growth over the longer term. Now, was she right that there was something coming, something brewing, something she'd heard was on the horizon? I guess so. However, the experience, her own experience, was lacking. She'd never invested in property. She didn't understand property as a business. She didn't understand the impact of interest rates or rents rising, falling, or the mechanics of what governmental decisions and worldwide economic situations have on a property business. So fortunately at the time, I took her advice with a little bit of a pinch of salt. I kind of thought, okay, well, that's an interesting idea, perspective, did a bit of research about it. We kind of had an instinct and started to, work with various bits of information that we were gathering at the time, and thought to ourselves, well, what we need to make sure that we're doing is putting ourselves, or making sure we're in the best position possible to ride out any storm. And so that's exactly what we did. We kept a close eye on the market. We refinanced at low interest rates as and when we could, got onto some cracking mortgage deals back in those days. And we bought carefully. We bought properties that we knew were going to cash flow well, regardless of the market, especially because we could lock in certain mortgage deals for a period of, let's say, 5 years at the time. So we didn't take her advice, and I'm jolly glad that we didn't, because it enabled us to be able to ride the wave. Yes, our capital element of our property portfolio was affected, but the cash flow element was just boosted during that time. So we didn't care. We didn't mind that the market went into turmoil, because we followed our instincts, we treated it as a business, and we listened to our own instincts and did our own research. We also had people that we knew were in this business, and we were seeking advice from them as well. We had a mentor a few years before that time, and we knew that what we were doing was the right thing, as long as we were consistent and kept up with doing the right steps, making the right steps in terms of building this business and turning it into sustainable business. Okay. Hey, thanks so much for listening into the show. I have a quick question for you. Are you feeling stuck in the grind, even though you're doing everything right? If you're in your 40s working hard in a successful career, but are wondering when you'll finally get to live life on your terms, you're not alone. After 15 years of coaching high-performing professionals, I'm opening up a few one-to-one coaching spots again for those ready to take back control. This isn't fluffy life coaching. It's practical, no BS conversations to help you escape burnout, build real momentum, and start moving towards freedom. If that's you, I'm offering a free 30-minute clarity session to see if we're the right fit. No pressure, just real talk and real strategy. Head to the link below to book your free session. Spots are limited, so grab one while they're open. Listen, you've waited long enough. This might just be the step that changes everything. So my suggestion to you is that you would only take advice from somebody who knows, someone who has been there, done that, and bought the t-shirt and has come out the other side and is in a position to be able to give you the right opinions and advice and wisdom, which is from hard yards earned on the streets kind of experience. The little phrase I want you to remember is this: never take advice from someone whom you wouldn't trade places with. I'm going to say that again. Never take advice from someone you wouldn't trade places with. So if you're listening to somebody's opinion, it might be a friend, it might be a work colleague, it might be a family member, could be any of those ones, or just a bit of hearsay. Maybe you overhear a conversation on a train, or you hear somebody, you read something online that kind of makes you think, piques your interest and thinks, oh, okay, that's interesting. What's that all about? Do your due diligence. Do your research. Understand whether that advice is coming from a really solid, knowledgeable place, or whether it's really just hype, hearsay, guesswork, goodness knows what. Because at a time like this, in fact, for decades now, especially with the internet having come about, there are so many people online who are, or even in person events, who are presenting themselves to show you how to make money, how to build wealth, how to create a business, how to reach a certain level of success. And it is absolutely great that we do have such a range and a variety of people who speak about this subject, and that we have access to this type of information these days. However, you still need to be careful who you seek advice from. make sure that you do your due diligence. Make sure you research them on the internet. Make sure you Google them and find out if they are genuine, if they really have done what they say they have done. And so that you can know whether the advice that you are hearing, the suggestions that are being made as to how you can go about a particular strategy, wealth creation or money making, or, success in whatever format. Obviously, we talk about these subjects on this podcast, but it's the same for health and wellness and getting advice about your diet, or etc., or relationships. Whatever it is, make sure that the person that you are actually seeking advice from is somebody that you would like to potentially trade places with, not necessarily stepping into their lives, but just so that you know that the knowledge and experience that they're sharing with you is something that you are confident about taking on, so that it's going to work in your own life. And that is absolutely key. So my last bit of wisdom for you on this subject is, if advice is free or cheap, then you have to really check whether that advice is worth it. And typically speaking, from my own personal experience and that of other people I've worked with and spoken to, if it's coming from a person who isn't necessarily living and breathing what they're talking about, or having a deep understanding, knowing and wisdom of that subject, then maybe take it with a pinch of salt. Go and seek out an expert, by all means, an expert who does give free advice in the first instance, to be able to see if they're delivering value. Of course, you want to understand that what they're saying is pertinent to you and is valuable to you. And then if you feel that that person is, then you can do the deep dive and get some help, some specific help from that person or those people that you resonate with in terms of those subjects I've just been talking about. And you're going to be getting the best guidance and tuition that you possibly can. So ignore the hearsay, ignore the loud noises, ignore the clickbait and the headlines, etc. If I were you, I would only be seeking advice from someone who's walked the walk and talked the talk, or talks the talk, I should say. So hopefully that's been useful for you to navigate these times where markets can be, starting to be overbought, oversold, news flashes coming out about what may or may not happen in the market. You need to be getting the right advice. So on that note, I shall leave you there. If you've enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you can pop a like or share it with a friend who you think may also benefit from hearing this type of advice. And I'll see you on the next show.